I hear them coming near, their heart it beats with fear. They say my name in shame. My words they were abused, my healing they misused, and now I stand accused. They came to light the flame, they came to watch me hang and burn my gifts away. But once the smoke's removed, my body's been abused. My soul is watching you. My sisters, we have come, the old and ancient ones, return to bring anew. We won't go in your flame, no, none of us will hang. Our voices we reclaim. The burned witches come, gather everyone, and hear what we do say.
Welcome to Burnt Witches, a limited series podcast where history rises from the ashes and comes back to you in a modern way. Here we discuss all things labeled magic, esoteric, spiritual, or the modern broad label woo. Looking to dispel myths, we will meet brave souls who came here to help, heal, and educate. But first, a step back in time with a few facts. We view witches and witchcraft today as being often paired with crystals or pendulums and wearing amulets. But in reality, more than 5,000 years ago, Sumerians were using crystals and wearing crystals and using them for rituals. And cultures from around the world have used and worn amulets to either ward off evil spirits or to bring the bearer good luck. In ancient Greece, we saw amber, a fossilized resin, being highly regarded for its color, saying it resembled the sun. It was said that when you rubbed the amber, it created magic, when in reality, rubbing the stone created an electrical charge that could be felt. And jumping to today's show, we would like to dedicate it to the witch trials of Trier in Germany. This was perhaps the biggest witch trial in European history. The persecution started in the Diocese of Trier in 1581 and reached the city itself in 1587. Between 1587 and 1593, 368 people were burned alive for sorcery in 22 villages. And by 1588, only 2 villages were left with only 1 female inhabitant in each. The trials of Trier were perhaps the biggest mass execution in Europe during a peacetime. So we ask why? Well, it all began when Johann von Schönenberg was appointed Archbishop of the independent Diocese of Trier. Now, Schönenberg greatly admired the order of the Jesuits, in which he was, quote, wonderfully addicted. He built them a college, and as a part of his efforts to demonstrate his convictions, he ordered the purging of three groups in society: the Protestants, the Jews, and lastly, the witches. The three stereotypes who were viewed for their nonconformity. As we have heard in many accounts already in this podcast, at the root we find money and control. As with this movement in Trier, it was promoted by many in office who hoped the persecutions would bring them wealth. But this thirst backfired on many, because of the 368 who were perished, 108 came from families of nobility or people with positions in the government and the administration. And for the lives lost in Trier, their only crime being nonconformity and religious persecution, we dedicate this show. And I am proud and honored to know in this lifetime another nonconformist, Alexis Rose of the Ascension Diaries, a gifted psychic medium, and one who I view, and I believe many others do, as scientist in her own right. So welcome to the show, Alexis.
Thank you for having me. Except, wow, that was an intense opening. That just was so cringy, like horrible. I never heard of that event. Oh my goodness. Wild.
Yeah, it's wild. Yeah, I'm learning a lot myself just going through. And I think so often when we look at witch trials, we think of one person, right? You know, like the one woman standing accused, or the one man. And that is part of the research as well. Many men were involved in this. But the research is showing that many of these, it was groups of people, many people. And I know in Salem, just here in the States, that was a group of people as well. But it is, and it's almost that people just got lopped in there together. And what's so sad is truly at the root of so much of it was just money and control. And it's something that I think we're still seeing today.
Yeah.
It's I think
leaving one woman left in villages, like how does that work? Like, doesn't work. Doesn't make sense to me at all.
Yeah, it doesn't. And upon further research, anyone can go and do this, look up these trials, but it was a huge lesson learned. And that's why
they're like, wait, where's our women? We don't want to do all this stuff.
Yeah. And and it's on me, those 108 people that were from noble families and they had high positions. They were all originally part of the persecutions. They were encouraging it on because they were hoping, oh, okay, I'll get on this side because this guy seems to be the leading voice from the pulpit, the quote unquote pulpit. So I'll support him. Well, that all backfired. That backfired on many, and they went down in the trials as well.
Funny, it's 108, that special number. It's making me think of the Buddhists for some reason now.
No, that's interesting. I didn't go that route. Is there more that you can add on that?
I'm pretty sure 108 is one of those numbers that they repeatedly do mantras to, like you'll do 108 times or something like that. I'm really hoping I have that correct, but it's hitting me that way memory wise. I didn't grow up Buddhist, but yeah. I'm wondering if maybe that was another layer of the ritual. Now
they love those numbers. They love their numbers. And another thing that I'm finding too when I'm going and doing this research is there's such a huge confliction within the numbers, the exact precise numbers.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and you almost wonder because again, we've discussed before on this show that meme of why are we learning history from the people who burnt the witches, right? So they can go in and they can alter numbers. But it is I'm researching number of sources, and the actual number of the people who perished, especially over in Europe, it was just so widespread, and it was so long ago. I mean, yeah, it's just the numbers vary wildly. Mm-hmm. So I read one account where they said based on all of their research, over 200,000 perished. Yeah. And then I read another and they said no more than 10,000. I mean, that's the level of discrepancy. Massive discrepancy. But I would love to get back to you. Thank you so much for being on the show. where are you coming? Where are you joining us today? I like to ask everybody where they're at on the grid system, because it is, we're all energy, we're all light. Where are you coming to us from today?
Well, the beautiful sun is baking me here in the Phoenix area, Arizona. So famously very hot, very sun friendly here. So it's blinding today. Honestly, the sunlight is pretty intense. I was going to check all of my instruments later, but I had to do this interview first. I was too excited. So I can't wait to check out what the sun's up to today, but that's my daily is feeling it first and then being like, okay, let's see what the numbers are today.
Absolutely. And maybe you can confirm this with me yourself. I've just noticed a huge shift in the feeling and the healing powers from the sun in the past almost 2 years now,
Mm.
where my body is actually craving to go out and
Mhm.
to be in it. I don't know. It's again, this is one of those woo things. I don't
Right.
have the scientific tools to explain the difference, but perhaps you do with all of your equipment.
Sure. I know. I can't wait if I ever had my own workshop. That would be so cool because taking all of my information from the NASA and so on affiliates that is trickling down to the public is tricky. But over the last couple of years, they've been talking about obviously the peak of the solar cycle, which is an 11-year cycle the sun does. And we should be peaking right about now. So the fact that you're enjoying maybe more plasma, you're getting more nutrition even from more of the solar explosions because it's just releasing so much more plasma. I'm watching it on cameras, do big bursts and leaving all this beautiful life creating building blocks shooting out into space, and we're just getting a ton more of it right now. So it's been fun, but it was in correlation, of course, to when the planetary pandemic or whatever we want to call it was all around the same time, and I assumed it was to maybe divert people from or give them a reason why they were feeling different because of the solar shift. Potentially, that was my loose guess that I'm going to follow through with now for the next, 5, 6 years of the rest of the solar cycle, because it'll be obvious after it's over when it peaked. So we can look at that research after. But I think right now we're sitting in that moment where everyone's kind of sure the end of this year was when we were going to get even more powerful solar flares and so on, more activations, as some of us like to say, DNA adjustments, even, because it's true. It's really what's happening. So it's not woo woo in that sense, but in this context, sometimes it does sound woo woo. So I try my best to tread lightly on those topics because people are very opinionated about it, but it's all there. I mean,
Mhm.
the popular science level of understanding is slowly elevating and having to make explanations for this solar cycle, which is good. I'm glad people are learning about it. It's one of the coolest things I ever learned, which is obviously why I have the blog I do, because tracking the solar cycles just seemed psychologically for me the most relevant thing, because I was tracking sociology and psychology to try and help people from their craziness and their depression. I couldn't figure out what's wrong with them. Turns out the sun is pretty much number one reason for everything, and medical, pretty much all of the medical field doesn't really quite account the solar weather of the day. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I started, but I just wanted to share.
Oh, no. Yes, please. As you're sitting here speaking, I'm thinking of the research that, some of the men, especially, not to discredit women by any means, but the men who ended up being held on charges
Yep.
for sorcery and witchcraft,
Yep.
they began as scientists. They were astrologers. Many of them worked in medicine as well. They were healers in the medical field.
Yep.
And then it just spiraled out of that. And then they went into philosophy. And then
Yes.
philosophy then led them into the esoteric world. And so I almost feel like science is the gateway that then leads you back into this esoteric spiritualism space.
Yeah, you can't run from it.
Yeah, it really, and it boggles my mind, and I'm sure yours, being on this side of the fence, how
Yeah.
because you see the connection between the two. And it helps to, we have so many unanswered questions, right? The soul has these unanswered questions, and the human psyche has these unanswered questions.
Yeah.
But when I feel in my heart, when all of the labels begin working together, then we can help find a bigger picture and answer those questions. And it's
Yeah.
the difficulty of teetering outside of your boxed label, right?
Yeah. Yes. It's been funny, like naturally developing psychic medium skills and then also having this whole other education and the more, I want to say, patriarchal idea of how to approach life. And then I have this whole natural organic skill developing, and watching them try and work together has been funny. It's really watching the two hemispheres of my brain become one, and like strengthening that corpus callosum bridge between the two. And that bridge is what I think, who knows, like all of the stuff we've been exposed to, all of the chemicals and whatever and frequencies could have just been to break down that bridge between our two hemispheres. Like that might have been the biggest spot they were looking for. That's also kind of where the pineal gland sits too, right there between the two hemispheres. So
Yeah.
that central point, that multidimensional window, that space is supreme, and everything else has just been kind of like distracting us away from that central place, that present moment, that doorway. And it's been cool to learn how scientists want to explain that doorway and how people who use that doorway want to explain that doorway. It's very different.
Yes. And I feel like if within each label, it's only going to take you so far.
Yeah.
And then you have to jump, you have to make that leap. And again, so often within this work, it is the surrender.
Yeah.
Right? It's
Yes.
just surrendering. Okay. I need to let go of these, I'm going to call them chains of what I know and what I perceive, and be open to fall into something brand new that will bring an entirely new awareness into the mind. Even you brought up the pineal gland. When you go and look at Egyptian hieroglyphs, my goodness, they're in
Yeah.
majority of them, they're holding the pineal, because they're holding in, that is the wisdom that they're holding in their hand. And that is the gateways. So I would love to ask you a question. When you bring up a solar cycle peaking, coming
Right.
up into that, I in my song, we're like, oh, we're going into another gateway. How does that look and feel for you? And then how do you interpret it into how it would affect us?
Cool. So scientifically, it is an 11-year cycle. And during those 11 years, around year 5 or 6 is technically the peak of it, or the center of that cycle. And during that time, more sunspots, more solar flares, just the most. And then obviously that peak will begin to show that it's petering out, because all of a sudden there'll be a few days without a solar flare, and then a few weeks, and then it'll start slowing down. And during the times where there is much more sunspot situations and then the solar flares. So first, these magnetic, extremely strong magnetic places on the sun, which those scientists who are getting those males, all of our male guys out there doing this work and research, a lot of them were in jail still doing this research in Russia and so on. Like I've learned about these guys who've watched the sunspots, because it's not too hard to see them. I mean, we just had an eclipse. They sell those glasses you can look at the sun with to look at the eclipses. If you put those on during a day where the sunspots are visible, sometimes you can physically see them because they're so big, these dark spots. And yeah, their evidence, the evidence that was being brought up and from men who were in jail and so on, like these scientists or whatever, were all mentioning that the human emotions on the earth and the appearance of these sunspots seem to correlate very strongly. And so we have technology that can actually see the sunspots before they rotate towards us, because the sun rotates towards us. And if you can see them a little bit ahead of time, you can also predict what is when we're about to have some human emotion peak on the planet, because as soon as those look at us directly, that's when usually that stuff will start happening. So we have technology now looking at the far side of the sun, I think, to kind of give that warning potentially about what may happen on Earth with the billions of emotional beings that are somehow being held on this planet. And, I've been emotional, and I wonder how many humans, like all of us emotional beings, can be stuck in one place. It's amazing to me sometimes, but I have learned that there is potential major emotional management happening to keep us from going crazy on Earth, because there's so many of us. And so it's been fun to watch the management team, almost like, as I've grown up into this science, how obvious it seems that there is these counterbalances and management, and there's a benevolence there almost to keep Earth Garden or Earth School from going completely nuts. But during the peaks of these solar cycles, it's pretty hard to manage that. So I think that's also why we had that attempt on us, like telling us all to stay home, telling us all to withdraw, isolate, and go through our emotional bursts and our intensity away from each other. And I think that may have helped keep almost like the built up pressure or the tension maybe from getting too dangerous during this high friction time with the sun. And it's been cool, but spiritually, then it's a whole other layer, right? So when you're getting all of this extra solar input, these photons and plasma and stuff, it just activates, I think it just makes us more vital. It just, with stuff that we need. And when we're getting more of it, we're more energized, we're more activated, pineal glands and so on, our chakra systems, our meridian systems, the way that we move chi through our body or energy, or, that polarization, all of it, like our magnetic field, our electric field, everything's getting boosted. So it's just a time, I would say, peak solar cycle time is the time where you probably would feel the most activated in your superpowers, would be my guess, and the most on, if the word makes sense. And I'm wondering if all of our abilities, as we're going to get our confidence up during this peak right now, we're going to be like, yeah, our abilities are peaking, we're amazing. And then in a few years, we're all going to be like, oh, I haven't had a contact from a dead relative in a really long time. Like, why am I not using my abilities anymore? And I think it just might be that ebb and flow, which is nice, if you get a little bit of a break every 6 years, I guess it would be, if I'm doing that right. But yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah.
seeing so far. I've done the study about 6 years now. So I've basically just been preparing for this first peak of a solar cycle that I'm getting to study without any professors or other people telling me what to do. Basically, it's just, I just get to do it myself.
Yeah. And that's a beautiful way. Then you're not clouded by anything else by doing it. But just listening to you, I kept getting the idea in my mind. I always ask, so why should we know about this? Right? Like, what would this be a benefit to know about? And, even sailors, right? They understand when different wind systems come through and or weathers come through, and they just know, oh, we never sail during this and this month because the winds aren't going to be in our favor. So if everyone had a general and broad understanding of how to use these tools, and I'm going to call these plasmic bursts as tools, to either as a way to accelerate something in your life in regards to, okay, now I have some extra wind behind my back, that now I can be doing this, and or, okay, no, now this is really coming my way, so now is the good time for me to come in and hibernate and really go within. This is a good time to be quiet and to meditate more. If we understood those, and those were broadly publicized and understood, it would make society and just people as a whole not work so hard.
Yeah, way more efficient. Yeah.
Way more efficient. Way more efficient. And it I just find it so interesting that what is the benefit of keeping it from us? Because even in your work, I know that when you are tracking these things and you put it out in a way to help and aid people, you are also suppressed in
Yeah.
multiple ways.
Yeah.
So let's just sit here and theorize between the two of us. What
Okay.
is the benefit? What's the benefit of of, let's call the quote unquote powers that be, even though I don't like to give them that energy, of keeping that away from everybody, even going back hundreds of years of this.
Right.
What's the benefit? Because if they really look at us as their worker bees, right? We're the producers for them. Wouldn't you think that they would want us to be at peak form?
Yeah. I mean, gosh, wouldn't you love to be at peak form? Has that happened to you in your lifetime? One time? I don't know.
No.
I don't know if that's happened for me. It would have been their motivation. I think we would have hit that one by now, but apparently it's not quite their motive. But I want maybe almost refer to them as the babysitters, because it's like those who haven't figured it out themselves need some sort of babysitter to kind of bump them along, like blind fish or something. Like they're hitting a wall and they're bumping another direction. And that's the only level of thinking some people are getting. And that's not their fault. I'm assuming a lot of it has to do with what's in their brain and bloodstream. But that's been a big conversation of the awakening community, is basically just clearing this crap out of you so you can get some coherency with your own thoughts, have coherency within a week of time, get something done in a decent amount of time, make a plan, execute the plan, work with other people. Like all these things are necessary, but it's been difficult. Like you need a brain that's not full of metal, and you need air that's not full of whatever. I don't even know. And it's tricky, but why are they doing this? And why am I trying to help people with this? Is because it affects you physically, I want to say. And people who we almost been brought up in a society where efficiency and output of work is one of our only things that we can claim as a person. We've been reduced to that point. A lot of people with their output, what are you outputting? How often? Whatever. But during these solar experiences and so on, they are so intense on the body, a lot of them, that the body needs to regrow cells, and the body needs to reprogram itself to live in the environment that has changed. Our bodies are obviously constantly adapting to our environment, very skillfully so, beyond what I think we even really believe we're capable of. Sometimes I think we are that fluid. We are very fluid beings, I think, and we adjust quite intensely. But with these solar influxes, I would say the biggest feedback I get is that people do get tired. Their muscles get tired. Their mind gets tired, like mind, body, spirit. They're getting tired. They're being inundated with an electromagnetic force that's so much stronger than them. And it's reorienting their entire atomic structure. And this takes energy, and this takes recovery time. So the babysitters, I think, knew this and gave everybody that time to do some recovery time and body adjustments during those 14 days stay inside turned into 2 years or whatever. And the medicine, people didn't adjust as quick maybe as 2 weeks we're allowing. So it took some time to adjust everybody and keep them from maybe even beating themselves up from not being able to perform because they don't understand what's happening to their body. So it's almost like the morale and the confidence of the worker population needed to be kept at a certain level. And when the sun slows you down, but you don't know it's the sun, it can mess with your mind. It can really make you, I want to say, people attack themselves a lot. They really are hard on themselves. And I grew up in a family like that. So when I was losing track of my ability to perform at the levels they wanted, but I was doing the study and seeing correlation that when all these energies come in, I slow down. I can't function very good. And I was doing that to help myself in a competitive lifestyle and other people who I knew were like me. Just take it easy on yourself. Here's actual proof that the earth frequencies are getting super loud. And you can't hear them, but it's happening to you. That's why you're slowing down, or even that's why you're going extra fast. When I notice when the earth frequencies get really fast, sometimes we pick up the pace, which would make sense because we are of the earth. So when the earth starts vibrating quicker, we start vibrating quicker. But it's a temporary experience. It's an ebb and flow, like I said. And but when the sun is really getting at us, that seems to be the harder one to adjust because we're not technically of the sun, I would say. Our bodies, our flesh aren't of the sun. So it's a little bit of a different speed for us, and it takes a little bit of adjustment, which is also why we have all these layers of atmosphere, and it breaks down and it breaks down all the wavelengths of light. It breaks down all of the polarities of the light and the particles. Like there's a lot going on to readjust what the sun's giving us to what we need. It's kind of like preparing a fish tank at home. It's we're in a whole different environment here. We are kind of underwater, the atmosphere water. We're like little fish down here. I think about it all the time, but busy little fish. And some days we just can't. And people will attack themselves viciously sometimes if they can't perform. I've noticed, and it's more been about pushing against that expectation in society is what I've done this blog. It's been like, give yourself a little bit of room for that, because you know, you're your own worst enemy. And if you're going to attack yourself all the time, you're going to die. Like you're going to kill yourself off through shame and guilt. And it's not your fault. This is nature. Be in love with it. Dance with it. Bring it into your personality. Own it. Know exactly what your symptoms are. You know, be confident with your own personal relationship with the sun and the earth and your body. And that's been really fun to do, is kind of give that power back to people and give them some sort of place and to fulcrum off of and begin their own research and of their own bodies. Because I've noticed too, people's bodies will react differently. And it does help with the evidence that we are quite a group of mixed up hybrid people down here. And there's a variety of DNA, because I couldn't do the study properly. I really wasn't able to collect enough data to show what each event the sun was causing in people, because everyone was having a different experience, which was cool. But I tend to relate. People who have the same experience tend to gather up. So those little camps start to be built. And that's, again, the efficiency of the system, I think of too. Like if we were all organs, you know, this organ's reacting this way and that's cool, but this organ over here is functioning this way. And we all just by how we react to the sun is evidence of what organ we are in the great body potentially too, which is cool.
Yeah, that's so, you know, even and when you talk about, because our DNA is so different and because we do come from so many different celestial bodies down here.
I think
That's
so, yeah.
even just going to the most basic of, this is why no diet down here is a one
Yeah.
species fits all. You know, and I don't know which camp I fall into with that, because I almost feel like big support of like blood type diets. You know, if you have this blood type, you know, you should be doing this, but at end, just there are so many different variables down here, because at the root of it, this is a school.
Yeah.
It's a school for all of us, our little souls down here. I don't mean to say little, but our souls down here, to be growing and shifting so many things. I was at a soccer game, and this is a few years ago. And obviously I was following all of your posts. So I knew that at that time we were getting hit with a massive solar flare. So I was sitting outside and with all these parents watching my son, and they were all complaining about how they just couldn't move. They felt so
Wow.
selfish and so tired. And the number of people that I was sitting with were doctors. You know,
Nice.
Saturday off from work, all physicians, and they couldn't understand why they had headaches, and they said flush, like, God, I can't move today. And we're, you know, walking across the field, the game's over. And I looked at all of them and I just said, you know, loudly so everyone could hear me, well, you know that we're getting zapped with a massive solar flare right now. So your body is trying to deal with that. We're essentially being microwaved. So you
Yeah.
really need to take good naps today, allow the body to rest, really hydrate as much as possible. You need to get magnesium, get all of your trace minerals in. It'll help you feel better. They looked at me like I had 14 eyeballs on my head.
No.
Yes, they did.
Oh, I'm
I
surprised.
mean, they're like, okay, okay, Abby. So, you know, I don't know. That's why I get frustrated, you know, even when some people are confronted with just any type of information that they didn't get off of their screens.
Yeah. Or a
That they
textbook.
or textbook, they don't have a place for it.
I cannot believe that they were like, what are you talking about? Like, do you not see that big ass thing in the sky, homie? Like, you're sewing people together. We're going to help you out.
Yeah.
We need your brain to be working too, because we need you to sew people together, which I'm glad you're doing. Thank you for that, for your work. But maybe don't do it right now because you're kind of feeling crappy, but I know why. So you're okay. I'll know when it ends too, doctor. I know how long this period's going to last. I know how, when the symptom is likely going to end so you can get back to work.
I think so often, and you mentioned it earlier, the experience of I'm very connected, for all the mediums and psychics that are listening to the show, that there have moments where their connection out beyond the veil is just on fire. Boom, boom, boom. They're getting, messages and channels and seeing things, and it's beautiful and magical.
Yeah.
And then it'll just go boom.
Yeah.
And so often I want to release every single person listening. It's not you.
Yeah.
And if you are experiencing that, so for me, when I am in that space, I've learned now, I take that as, okay, so this is my time to be here, to be
Yeah.
very, very present on earth, on Gaia, and to be with my physical humans that I'm with, in connection with them, and connecting with nature, and being here, and knowing that, all right, that pendulum is going to swing right back, and I'll have that strong connection again. But right now, I'm supposed to be grounded and working on my physical body.
Yeah, thank goodness. Yeah, we have the dual team, the dual bodies, some say, even where you have your spiritual body and then you have your physical body. And during this time, we bounce between both because the conditions, the environment is so in both worlds, I want to say. And I don't want to go too far down this tangent, but I just want to mention that I've been during these downtimes, right? I ended up watching some anime shows, I want to say, that friends and peers, other people in our community are watching, and seeing a lot of overlapping themes and putting them into context in kind of conflict situations or social situations, even like developing what it looks like to have these abilities. And it's been I want to say a huge awakening for me to show that there is a massive effort, I want to say, and maybe it's just Japan, but potentially Japan, especially, who is putting out a lot of this anime, has a much better idea about how these cycles work, how when these spirit portals are opening, how they open, what happens during these moments, and the good and the evil, how they have to, it's like oil and water, they're constantly next to each other but can't quite mix. And it's been an epic and surprising education, because I thought skipping them as a young person, I was like, okay, I can get more serious, get into some stuff that really matters, study some real good stuff. But now I'm going back into this fiction area almost, but it's not quite fiction. It's that whole thing. They're hiding so many things in the behind this stance of fiction. And I've learned a lot more depth even about how to look at what's happening. And it's opened up my ability to even perceive new phenomena that I wouldn't have considered anything before. So that's been cool and unexpected part of this research.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. It's hidden in plain sight. And I mean, even just for myself, when I was starting to understand much more of the light body, the energy body, and guides, and everything that we have, my first thought was, well, okay, how can I share this with people so they can understand it in a much easier way? And I started writing a children's book.
Yeah. Okay.
An old children's book. And so I believe, and you can, and tell me if you feel this too, because I imagine you probably do, when you're either watching something on screen and or we're reading a piece of fiction, it zings in your soul when you're reading something that is
Yeah.
context of it being make believe, but this is absolute truth right now.
Sometimes it's a little jarring even. You're like, holy crap, they're really talking about that.
It is. It is. I had so many of those moments when I was watching the Marvel series.
Oh yeah.
It's getting a lot of flack recently, but I'm telling you, there's so much truth in that. And my son and I, we would just look at each other and just our mouths would just drop and like, they're showing people everything right now. So, yeah, it's
It's
a way.
good.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good way. It's easily digestible because the mind is in a place of receiving when you're viewing a movie or viewing your anime or just viewing the shows, you're in a relaxed state. It's in a place where it can process. So we're not bringing in that ego cognitive dissonance in that state. We're not being confronted.
True.
So it's a brilliant way. And Stan Lee actually started to say in his latter years that there were aspects of our own United States government that were coming to him and giving him information and saying, "Can we need to start putting this out?" And then
Right.
where a lot of the ideas came from for the comic series.
Well, I used to live in Sedona, Arizona, which we were potentially going to bring up in this podcast, but there is a huge, when you're talking about and opening up this episode, all I was thinking about was Sedona and all of the people living there, the men and the women, and being like, gosh, all these people who maybe have gone through that particular ending, being recognized for their abilities and then murdered for it, which is unexpected. They all had to come back and go through and kind of, I want to say, grow past the point where they were killed and experience aging into adulthood and growing old and retiring even. And a lot of these people maybe didn't get that chance. And it just feels like Sedona is like a retirement home for all of these magical creatures who got their lives cut short in like weird random ways. And they all just had to incarnate and fix it up and be little in their little magical Disneyland of Sedona and get back to work. And they love Marvel movies in that city. I swear everybody knows. They all go to the one theater when they open. Everyone's wearing their outfits. Like it was epic. So lots of
That's
superheroes there.
absolutely. Well, and the soul does an interesting thing when they age past that point of trauma from the last
Yes,
life. There's
thankfully.
yes, there's a sense of release because it's almost as you're getting there, you're aging closer and closer towards that age where you were persecuted. There can be a lot of friction there and a lot of fear and a lot of angst. And then when you move past it, it's almost a
Like a whole new
okay,
world.
it is.
Maybe that's
It
why
is.
we're doing that episode together today, because I've been feeling that kind of pressure. And I've been feeling it also leave lately too. So I've been like, oh, did I make it past that little weird point? And so it's cool that you're saying that.
Yeah. I brought it up in a prior episode. I was talking to Craig Walker about it, but
Okay.
my whole childhood, I had always had, and I loved it. I had like a ring around my neck that was with
Oh
moles.
my God.
And I would always have like, oh, like, I have a natural necklace around here. And
Aw.
I actually brought it up to one of my friends I met here in Charleston 5 years ago. And she said, that's a persecution. That's a beheading. So people who've been headed, you end up having moles all around your neck, the ring around the neck. And so I have since remembered that lifetime now, and now I know everything that happened in that. But they're disappearing. They're almost all gone now.
Wow. That's crazy.
And I've had them since I was a very, since I can remember looking in my mirror. Because I used to like get my neck really tight, like this, and like there was like just a mole and all my little divots going around my neck. Weird child.
Perfect spots. No, it makes total sense.
Yeah. And it is, I've aged past it. I have it, and I feel that release. And sometimes I almost look down and it's all gone. The moles are almost all gone. And there's a little bit of a sadness there that I've aged past it and I don't see them anymore. But it's also I've done this. It's a reward feeling as well. I've continued on.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you did. I'm glad that that wasn't our demise this life. Seems like there's a totally different plan this time around.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's, the souls that have chosen to come back. Everyone that I've met that have memories, there's nothing that will stop them in this lifetime.
So do you
Absolutely
think all
nothing.
those people were talking about Christ?
And the which one?
Yeah,
The
like all the people they killed off, were they people who are like, oh yeah, I know Jesus?
Well, I know for myself, the I have two lifetimes actually of persecution, but the one I was just a healer. I wasn't
Okay.
talking about anything religious. I was just a healer that was it was a nonconformist. I lived outside of the city. Um, and I was a healer and I also did some prophecy work, but ultimately in that lifetime it was because I rejected a man who was of nobility. And when I rejected him, I injured him. And out of his embarrassment, because I scratched his face up, he turned me in for witchcraft.
You. Well, at least you got a little bit on him, at least, you know. I don't know if I'd have the bravery to go ahead and I would. But
Yeah. Well, I
I
was just, in the process of fighting him off. He got,
gross.
I got mad.
Oh, I just want to be there now and just start punching, just like that's my immediate instinct, just like astral projecting there immediately to help out.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I've discussed on another show that some people, they were accused of witchcraft for women just because they owned books.
Oh God.
They had books and they had a thirst for knowledge, and women weren't allowed to read.
Ugh.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
just it boggles me. Like, how did it even get to that point? Like, you know, get
Yeah.
back to the rocks and the sticks, you guys. Like, sorry. That would be my instinct. Be like, you know
I
what? I need a big rock. I think that's what I need for this situation.
know. Yeah. Yeah. When you start really delving into the meat of these stories, and a lot of them, so they have the initial, when the women or men were first brought in, you have their initial testimony. And then for some reason, after 3-4 days of being tortured, then you get this other story. And then that's what ultimately led them to being burned or being hanged,
Mm,
was the hallucinations that started coming out of their mouths after 4 days of being of without water and food and being physically tortured.
sure, because I'm sure all those folk could definitely come up with some interesting things after being put in a state like that.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, yeah. So, and that's what they base the trials on, which is so interesting. I would love to actually. I've asked everybody else this: is there anyone in your family, in your bloodline, that has these abilities?
Yes, yeah, I was. It was just my mom. So it was pretty easy. It was just like yourself and your daughter, similar, where she had the abilities and she would whip them out sometimes, but she was also able to make them more dormant and push them away. Because really, until just, I don't know, 10 years ago, not even this has not been a normal thing to discuss or feel proud of, is having these abilities. From my culture and where I was at, walking around a bar and then taking someone's hand and then telling them all these things about them and their future wife and their kids or whatever, because my mother could do those things. She would do it and she loved it. And she's a very talented woman. I want to get her, she's hopefully going to start up her own business soon. She's on that precipice now to become a healer where she's at and give her gift out more to people, because it's stunning. She's one of the more talented psychics I've seen, but she would repress her gift and use wine and alcohol as a way to kind of repress, but also it would give her the opposite effect and it would open her up more. So she'd be in a great mood. And then all of a sudden she's grabbing everyone's hand in the room and giving them readings. And she would do that. She started doing that at her office meetings and her regional sales meetings. And then she's now become kind of, she started giving people emailed readings and stuff in her own company. So she's been making her way, getting comfortable with her skill. But I wouldn't say necessarily goes into mediumship as much as I tend to go. Hers is more about you and who you are and what you're going to be up to. She's a little bit more of a psychic for the individual, I would say.
Mhm.
She used to laugh at me, and she'd see things about my life, and then she'd be like, "Oh, I can't tell you." And I would hate that so much. I was just like, "Come on, lady, like, you're with me 24/7. You're not going to give me heads up." But I now know the rules of, don't get in the way with people's fate and get in their heads, because our minds will screw stuff up and block us from our blessings. So there's another skill in being a psychic, and what to say and what to not say to your own client, which is another tricky part. I don't know if everyone knows that about the craft, but it does happen. And I will even, yeah, you have to apologize to your own clients. Like, listen, this is something I can't tell you yet, but they want to tell you in their own way. So you got to be open to this answer on your own time, because it's too personal, or it's not your right time right now, and things like that. So she is my connection to having that confidence, I would say, to pursue. But I went into this community to defend her, to protect her, because she was getting taken, and she was having evidence of actual physical injury and leaving blood on her pillow, stuff like that. And burnt grass in our backyard, like landing pad burnt grass stuff, and hearing them running around in the hallways and stuff. Like, I could hear. So I was starting to get concerned, and it's free will also. So you are the one that gives permission for these things. These are her contracts, and my dad's potentially too. But I was like sitting there perceiving it all, realizing I don't want to be in these contracts. Don't love these contracts. So I had to stop, talk to God, stop all my contracts, reset them, being like, we're going to start all new contracts. People can approach me in the daylight and ask me what they want. And that's what I've been working with since, and letting her take her abilities and her contracts in the direction she wants. And I've moved away from her. We've gotten some space, and epic things have pursued. She's always been a very vivid dreamer too. So she always told me about the army of angels that she would dream fighting alongside with, like just epic angelic battles she would tell me about. So I always knew those were real. How would I not trust her? But I've met the angels, and I've met what they look like in our bodies down here too. So it's been cool to see the army of angels in the flesh and what they get up to. And it's funny that you don't think angels and witches have anything to do with each other, but I think honestly the bridge is not that far off. And same with angels and aliens, even for people, very similar frequency potential. It's just, what frequency is that being resonating in? Is it higher than yours? Okay, then they're kind of more of an angelic being to you. They'll definitely have a better perspective, see what they have to say, kind of energy. And it's been good to go in that direction with these gifts. I know other people come from families where they're doing way more intense stuff, and stuff that would make you go, is that a dangerous person in our community? And would we call that a witch, or would we call that a psychopath? It's been the labeling problem. We've been dealing with labeling problems a lot, but I think that's what's terrified my mother. She definitely has those similar scars of her past from her wanting to pursue this publicly. But I just couldn't stop myself from trying to find answers, because I just wanted to protect her the best I could, and myself and our genetic line. Basically, it was kind of like, okay, where does this stop? Where does this stop? How do we redirect this? Who are we working with? And it's a variety, I'll tell you that. It's been interesting. It's pretty hard to tell how many contracts you have. There's just so many, so many contracts you can make before you're born. It's wild, but the effect it has on your family is very interesting. It reasserts them into different parts of society, and sometimes you have a child that has to fix everything that you've done. You don't know it, but I don't think that's what I'm doing with my mom, but I'm definitely helping create like a bumper space for her to enter in and be more confident with her skills, because we need her. She does stuff that me and you can't do, and you and me do stuff she can't do. We all need each other, I think. It's like a true immune system.
Yeah, it's interesting. You brought up so many topics that
Yeah, I did. Sorry.
no, I loved it. It was beautiful. Thank you so much. I really would love to get into the ethics discussion.
Yeah.
But on your end note, it is very interesting of how much ego tries to come into this work and to try to keep it out, because sometimes there is the feeling of, well, I'm more connected than you, or I have better abilities than you do. But it's all just, it's a falsity. We're here with different abilities, and it's all to help each other. It's to help all of humanity with them.
Yeah.
It's not, well, I'm the most powerful and I'm the most tapped in. And it's really unfortunate when I see that, when I'm seeing that play out in some communities or in some people, and just like, oh, come on, can we all just all be here just to celebrate each other and help out, and just grow
Yeah.
from that. But I really love that you brought up the ethics, because that has not been covered yet on any of the shows.
Nice.
In doing this work. And I think the lack of ethics is
Yes.
why we have such a negative perception of especially psychics
Sure.
now. And I would love to get your opinion on the ethical place within doing this work, in regards to, just because you see it and just because you feel it and hear it doesn't mean that it's supposed to be shared.
Yes. And sometimes you don't know exactly what is going to throw somebody, but their guides do. And their dead family member who's hanging out with them definitely knows what's going to upset them. And so sometimes I will see beings or see family members put a finger up to their mouths, like the shush motion. And it's like, oh, that's all you get, babe. You're getting the quiet. So I'm like, look, this is who I see, and this is what they're doing. And then the person will be like, okay. And they can take that information, and who knows what context that means to them. But I've had to do that multiple times. And even I do live streams, and I talk about all of the light codes and patterns and symbols that I find alongside the space weather I'm tracking every month. As a psychic, just like cultural symbols that seem to be playing out. And sometimes, again, I will be shown, like, don't talk about that yet. Even mid-sentence, it's like, wait, don't say anything. And I do wonder. And as a kid, I wondered more, like, why? Why would you withhold information? Aren't we all the information? How is it that I'm being separated from information? And it is we're doing it to ourselves somehow, and we know the timing of our own maturity, and there's that outside of time version of us that knows when to implement what to get the direction they want to go. I believe that. So I trust it. And sometimes it's so hard. Like my husband, once I looked over at him sleeping, and there was a little being standing on him, little tiny guy, like, who knows, like 4 inches tall. And he just put his little finger up to his mouth, like, shush, shushed, like, be quiet. Don't tell him I'm here. Don't say anything. And I was just like, why? Why are you doing this to me? What's the big secret? And I think a few days later, there was some sort of massive alien disclosure article or something that my husband was super into, but had some sort of personal connection to, and made him go on this awakening moment. So it's like, I almost didn't want to ruin it for him. It's like, don't wait. It was like, we're coming soon, but don't blow the secret yet. And I was like, okay, I gave them a few days, because with another entity entirely, I don't exactly want to take all their advice, because I don't know if they're quite in their ethics either, because I didn't never recognize that little being before. I was a new little alien dude. And it was really funny. It was a funny experience, but I believe that's why they wanted me to wait, was because they were about to release something about themselves to the public, and I was going to basically just ruin the surprise for Jace or something. So I didn't ruin it for him, and it worked out. But it's never anything too intense. I would say not life or death. I would hope. I've not been in those scenarios very often, but if I had to work in those fields, like with all of our rescued kids and rescued women and children from all of these horrible institutions that are holding these people and not paying them or giving them living, like, proper dignity, like working with that group of people, there might be a few more moments where I'm getting the shush symbol, because it's too much. It's going to overwhelm them, and they're already too on edge. You don't want them to lose track with reality, because if you get them ungrounded, then they're not going to hear anything you say after that. So keep them in their bodies, basically. So you might say something that ungrounds them, in their spirit. So that's probably why.
And sometimes information, I had something come through once for a client, and as I was seeing it, actually their higher self stepped in and quickly overstepped that and said, you cannot tell them that, they're not ready to hear this yet. And it was something from their childhood, like it was just like a trauma was coming up, and it was repressed. They had
Oh no.
and they said, nope, do not share it. And so that's the ethics. Just because I'm seeing it and feeling it doesn't mean it needs to be shared.
Sure.
And with some, especially if a parent has lost a child, sometimes the parent is, the child is there in spirit and you're talking with them, and the parent is wanting to get more information. But their child will tell me they don't need to know that. Just let them
Right.
know I'm good. Just let them know I'm happy. I always knew this is going to be this way. Everything is exactly as it was meant to be. I'm good. I don't have any pain. I'm happy.
It-
So
I do get that moral dilemma sometimes because some of our friends have passed on loved ones in our community. And then we'll be at a conference or whatever, around these people. Or for me, it's usually a couple weeks before we go anywhere. But then all of a sudden a visitation from a family member of one of my friends comes along and I'm like, how do I bring this up? Like, I feel embarrassed almost. It's like I'm not deliberately thinking about you or your family, but all of a sudden there it is. And then you're like, do I say anything? How do I work this into a conversation? It happens sometimes, and sometimes I forget, and you let it flow.
yeah.
But it's cute in a way too, because our friends, like, I truly love my friends. I'm a lover deep, and it's gotten me into trouble. I've been heartbroken over friendships. I just feel a lot. I feel like as an adult, you're like, oh yeah, whatever. I'm a psychic. I get it. I feel things. But I just feel this depth with people, especially in our community. And I just want to like hold them and be like, you're okay. Like, we'll take care of each other. Like, it's all right. And these messages will come through. But I've recently had a friend of mine who's actually disappeared. And I don't know if you've dealt with a disappearance, but I'm sure with those witch trials, there was also a lot of people just disappearing. Like, where's our family member? Similar vibes, and using your abilities to try and find people who've gone over is another ethical issue I've noticed, because they don't even want to tell you everything about their life and maybe why they passed on and what happened, but you need to figure out where they are. So you get what you get, and then some things you have to hold on to because you're like, oh, they might actually incriminate my situation with what they're up to. Like, it can get like that. And almost souls and spirits will protect us from information that could implicate us and put us in danger. It's one thing I've figured out too, which has been crazy. So I've had a missing person that's been like, you don't need to know the details, but I'm definitely gone. And I've been trying to figure that out because it's the first time I've had a friend of mine pass away and disappear like that. So it's been tricky.
It is. So one time I was helping with a case, and the information, because I was getting it all from spirit, was coming through. Now I did all this work from my house, but
Okay.
it was so accurate that my husband was terrified. He said, they're going to call you in. Like,
Yeah.
they're going to implicate you. I mean, to the point where she showed me on a map, and I could hear exactly where to find her body at.
Ooh, nice.
And I was in the car when, for the people who kidnapped her, and so I gave an exact description of the make and the model and what the people look like. It was probably one of the clearest
Wow.
that I've ever done
Yeah.
in regards to that, where it's like, oh my goodness, she just gave me everything, and it was just clear sight.
Perfect.
And but yeah, I mean, my husband was like, "Hey, you need to stop talking to the FBI. They're going to think that you did this. She's
Oh,
getting too much information." But I was just happy that they found her and the family was able to get peace through it, and nothing ever did come from it. But I understand exactly what you're saying, of if we share to such accuracy, how does the logical mind who doesn't understand this work not think, well, they must have done it?
yeah. Or exactly.
Yeah.
And it's weird. And it's a part of this work that I feel like people don't get. And there is a lot of that fabulousness, like, ooh, you're a psychic, and ooh, your opinion about things definitely matters more than mine because you're a psychic and you know more and all this. And it's like, yeah, that's cute. But guess what? Also, there's a lot of dead things roaming around needing help. It's not exactly glamorous, and some of it's horrible. And, you know,
Yes.
when you see, and that veil is there. I see why the veil is there now. I get why the veil is there now.
I had a spirit in my house once, and I knew why she was here, and I allowed her to hang out for a couple of days. She was a very, very sweet woman, and she was
Oh, I
actually,
thought this was the kid. Didn't you also have a child hanging out with you too? Okay, yeah, go on.
yes, yeah. So this is another this is another thing. So she hung out here for 3 days, and her name was Mariah, and she was actually a slave here because I live in Charleston, South Carolina. For everyone at home listening that don't know that, so I'm just close to a lot of plantations down here.
Yeah.
And she came in, and I always ask the questions, do you know that you're dead? Because sometimes they don't. And I asked, do you need help crossing over? And she said, no, I know it's time for me to go. I just want to experience the love from a family for a couple of days. And so she just asked if she could hang out for a couple of days, just to being around her kids. And so while she was here, then I sang for 3 days. I could hear her, the songs that she would sing out in the fields. They're so beautiful. So I just sang those songs for 3 straight days. My family had enough of it, honestly. But she, she took me to, because sometimes spirit will do this. They will take you to their death moment, which is, that's always good. If they can get me to how they passed, then they're ready to cross over, because then they can review it and see it and accept it.
Yeah, that's pretty clear.
Yeah, very, very clear. Yeah. So when she finally got to that space, I felt it in my body as she was feeling it, and it was from smoke inhalation. So what
Oh,
I was seeing was somebody had caught all the fields on fire,
jeez.
and so she passed from all the smoke. And she had children, so that's why she wanted to come in my home with my kids and just being around just children again, because she lost her children in the fire as well. But I was in my kitchen at 1 a.m. chugging, and I don't drink milk because it doesn't, my body doesn't like it anymore.
Yeah.
Chugging milk because my whole throat was engulfed in smoke
Oh,
from this fire. And as I'm sitting there chugging, I'm telling her, back up, back up, back up. I get it. I get it. Like, you made your point. I understand how you passed away. I am so sorry. I'm like having tears going down my face. I'm so sorry this happened to you, but please don't make me feel it anymore.
yeah. I'm about to drown.
I'm about to drown in milk because my throat, oh my goodness, it was so intense. But yes, psychic medium, that is absolutely the going through the veil, what that feels like sometimes.
Well, and it's cute too because sure you get clients, you get to talk to a family member, and here's a Sasquatch over here, and oh look, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, what secret society is that? Uh-oh. Oh, that bloodline doesn't look very good. Oh no. Oh no. And then it just gets worse. And you're like, oh, what do I say? Like, and I'm getting that from my own blood too. And it's been coming in randomly at times. And I'm like, I don't know if it's true or not. I can't tell. Like, I wouldn't be able to check, but I'm like, this planet. And then you go out in public and you go driving and you see the symbols of it. And you're like, I'm surrounded by this. And you're like, oh, what do you do? And that awareness isn't bliss. It's definitely not bliss. It takes adjustment. Like I'll discover something and then see it's everywhere and then get scared of it and then have to readapt like
Yeah.
some fortitude against this particular threat that I didn't even know was there and
Oh
continue
yeah.
adjusting. So Phoenix is a fun place for that. Any kind of big city, anything that has any old Tartarian buildings in it around, like any older settlements like that, they'll have all those symbols around and people who deeply believe in them still because power is basically what everyone's clamoring for here. Any sort of power to try and keep themselves safe.
Oh yeah. We did Nashville, Tennessee, and
Ooh.
that was, and my children are very awake and very aware and tapped in. And we were seeing symbols everywhere we went, to the point
Yeah.
where we were like, we're done. We're ready to leave. We need to leave. We don't want to be
Yeah.
here. We went to one location. All four of us got actually physically ill because we were just tapping into all of the things that had happened. I'm going to keep it clean for this show, but all the things that had happened ritually
Yeah.
in space. And so we all got sick. So we had to run out of that building. And the final clencher was we were coming back to our hotel, and this man kind of like half jogged in front of us so that he could open the door to us for us. And the whole back of his shin was a tattoo of the Freemasons.
Yep. Yeah. 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 That's always a fun one too. When they start walking up to you.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and of course, me and my kids saw that. They were the ones who saw it first. Mom, look at his tattoo.
Right away. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
gosh, you learn about that group, you're like, oh my goodness. And then you're like, well, there's groups that we don't even know the name of. And you're like, oh, it gets worse. Like these people are the most open group out of all of them. They're like, look at all this cool. Well, look at us. It's so out there. It's
Yeah.
still terrifying. And now you're like, wait,
I
who are
know.
they worried about? I want to know who you guys are worried about.
Right. You know what? I've never even asked that. I've never even thought that question, Alexis.
And we're so close to the border here. And you know how that's all getting, but Texas, I think, is getting the most of it. I'll be honest. It seems like, but here it's like there's this older group that's trying to keep this weird structure intact and
Mhm.
integrating all these new people into it. It's like they have to keep some sort of communal structure. And this is the one they like. But I'm not keeping a communal structure. I had no idea this was happening until I saw it. And I'm wondering, like, they're integrating a bunch more citizens, I would say. I know they don't want to tell the citizens that, but I think they're just bringing in more people, more people. They got to put them somewhere, and they are. I think they're housing everybody and they're getting them all settled in. And hopefully with the mentality like, okay, we're all in this together. Good job. And like, that's where my fingers are crossed. Like, good job, everybody. Let's enjoy the American dream together.
I mean, that's always the hope that we have in all of our hearts, is
So
that
far, it's worked okay.
everyone's for a positive timeline.
Yeah.
I feel that when I look at the global stage, I feel that there are so many storylines being
Yeah.
played out, and people in these storylines aren't aware of any other storylines. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, replace storylines with timelines, they're just all overlaying each other.
Totally.
And so I, as a soul, have decided just to step back, and I'm just observing all of all of them, but holding in my heart which timeline I'm going towards. So,
I do feel lucky to have the privilege to have that perspective for sure. I feel very lucky.
yes.
And I know we probably just make content maybe just to try and bring people to that place because it is comfortable. Like it's definitely more comfortable for my nervous system to be where, what you just mentioned, I'm doing the same thing. And then
Yeah.
we make content like, hey, you can sit in this position too if you want. Back up and watch all of the storylines instead of just the one you're invested in. You may learn way more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Get some perspective, moving away from my family, I turn around and see a lot of stuff I endured as a child. And you never think it's torture or you never think it's abuse, even the school system. And you're like, nope, I was definitely being coerced as a child in unhealthy ways, in so many ways. And as an adult, I'm this like rigid, scared thing because I've been coerced in so many directions. And it's good to break that all down and realize even just people who think they aren't a part of something, who just went to public school and worked at a random job, like you're still engaging in evil and you don't even realize it. And just taking the step back, you really get a better perspective about, how nature can actually work without all this nonsense.
Yeah. It is. It is fascinating to step back and observe. I will say one thing that I have observed is, and I don't know if you have,
Hmm.
there are certain physical spaces that I drive by now that I don't feel a depth, a three-dimensional depth to it any longer. It's
Yeah.
almost like seeing a two-dimensional facade. And it is the eeriest feeling
Sorry, I gotta laugh.
to have.
It's so true. Getting in the car and going places has been really weird lately.
It is, I just being psychic, you feel we're in our feels. And so what we do is we push out our auric field, and then throughout that auric field, we are getting messages and information from other energy fields, right? So just for everyone, all the listeners at home, this is how it feels like when you're working within this psychic field.
Mhm.
And I've done that to these areas. I just push out my field as far as I can to see what does that field feel like inside my field. And it's nothing. And this is the reason why I bring this up was I asked my oldest daughter about
Mhm.
this. I said, when we drive down this way, what do you feel? And she said, Mom, I feel like I'm looking at a movie set because there's nothing behind it anymore.
Yeah. Well, there you go. It's obviously palpable in those spots. Like, I believe it. I totally believe it. It is bizarre. And again, even with the people and the traffic I'm surrounded by, you're just like, where do you all come from? And I know there's discussions about that where there is that filler. Dolores Cannon mentioned that in her books
The
where they had,
NPCs.
yeah, they had like this filler stuff in our little hologram to make us feel less lonely down here or in this school or whatever. So
Yeah.
you become a student long enough, you realize what parts of the school are still in use and what are just for show or like, the movie set.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. And I just to kind of circle back, this is why I'm making this podcast.
Yeah.
I wanted
Yeah.
to make it. It's for those who are drawn towards this information. It calms down my nerve system. Hopefully it calms down your nervous system to know that we're reclaiming our voices.
Yeah.
We're still here. And no matter, I had this joke with one of my friends, with my other medium friend, and she was being attacked at nighttime too, how you were talking about with people that your loved ones,
Yep.
and the being persecuted in the past. And I just started dying laughing like an insane person does. And I said, what are they going to do? Kill us? Because we'll just come back. and the and that's just how I feel about when we're looking at the global stage and all these storylines that are being played out. When you go into the eternal soul, I was listening to a documentary the other day and I resonated extremely well. He said, I don't like using that we're infinite beings, the soul is infinite, because when you look at the infinite symbol, right, it's a the sideways 8.
Yeah.
And he goes, well, that's almost looking like it's a loop, right? It's infinite, it keeps on coming back and looping around. And he said, but the soul is eternal, so it's never ending. And by eternal, it means we can exist on other planets and in other universes and even within other source fields.
Yeah.
And so that resonated strongly with me. I watched it this weekend. If anyone watched it, it's called Code 12. It's on Amazon right now. But it resonated heavily that the soul is eternal. And then so I don't get that involved anymore with watching these storylines play out, when you realize, all right, these are just eternal souls all playing their parts. And when in reality, as you mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, we're just trying to come into that center field, like within your brain. Now that, the left and the right and balancing out and coming into that center, that pineal gland, where we can all travel and exist. That's really the goal. And it is. So we produce these types of pieces of work, like this podcast and your podcast and all of your work, so that we can exist and just focus on coming into that balance field.
Yeah, the balance is key. And I'm glad that with it, we're doing this in Libra season because balance is key. Big
Mhm.
time. Everyone's working on it this month, which I love so much. And everyone's so friendly and nice. It's a good season. So if you ever need to work on your balance, October is a great time. And go on.
Well, I mean, I just find that so interesting that this is the season to bring in balance, and everything that we're seeing around us is trying to get people as polarized as possible.
Yes, it is true. It's like the best time to have such a polarizing experience would be Libra season because it's like impossible to
Yeah.
polarize people in this time. It's fascinating and it's gone over pretty well. I mean, the level of stress I would say is much lower about this. There's almost like this understanding. Like, I mean, it's an old war. It's not. It's been happening. So
Mhm. Yeah, it's been a beautiful thing to see that people aren't falling into those camps, into those fields like they have in the past.
And I haven't been seeing crazy solar flares either to like egg on that intensity or cause madness. So it's been pretty, I would say the sun this month has been pretty gentle with us from this year. And this is when they were doing articles like, oh, the last half of 2023, you're really going to get it. And I was curious, like, okay, let's get it. But we see the war on Earth, but I didn't see a correlating intensity on the sun. Exactly. I did see some though, I'll be honest. But the intensity I saw made me feel like the war wasn't going to be as bad. You know what I'm saying? So
Well,
that was good.
that's an amazing, and maybe it's because this war gosh, I don't even like saying the word war right now. This
Yeah.
this theater,
Conflict.
this conflict, this theater. And when I'm saying theater, I'm not saying it's not real, but by theater, it's still, when you look for hundreds of years, there's always puppets, right? But this theater can be viewed for what it is.
Yeah.
And by that, when I'm looking through, I read people's comments. All their comments are understanding. We're going back to the money handlers, the money changer days, and people
Yep.
are understanding that aspect, and they're correlating it with what we're seeing now. And I think because perhaps we haven't been inundated with the solar flares, that we're able to, because we're in a more calm state, wanting to be in that balanced state, that we can view these as something like, why is this thing trying to stretch me and get me out of my balance right now? Let me really look at this in a calmer state. Oh, that doesn't make sense. That makes sense. And it's just a beautiful thing. I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it with more and more people.
Yeah, exactly. The people are able to think this one through. Thankfully, their minds aren't being scrambled too hard. One thing though about being a psychic and all this is you see all of the words and the catch-all phrases and stuff in the news and trying to explain briefly to the busy population, of course, briefly what's happening. And then I get all of this other information at the same time that will not be put in the news, but I'm going to have to just, I don't know, make a social media post about it and add it to the conversation somehow in the collective conscious, which has been fun. But I mean, one major thing that I was going to talk about, we don't have to go into majorly, but it is interestingly closely related to, I think, the witch trials is male circumcision, I would say, and the ritual of such. And the two populaces that are fighting right now, one has and one doesn't. In a way, it's part of their religious, it's a part of that. And what does that actually cause in men? Like, what genital mutilation of children, what kind of population are you going to grow out of that? So that's just been the major thing coming up, being like, well, we're going to have to talk about this now. And I was like, really, the conversation of this war is bringing me here. And it's like, yep, you're going to be your talking point. I'm like, great.
That's so interesting. I'm very, that is, I please do post work on that, because that
Yeah.
is fascinating. It's something that I have seen growing for the past 3 to 4 months in posts that people are starting to talk about.
Good. Okay, good.
Yes. So for you to say that now, I can see it because it's something that has been building and building and building. Um,
Yeah, almost like all of these worldwide distractions to distract away from the literal mutilation of our male children, like majorly planetary wide.
Well, I think it's because and I'm not going to go in
Yeah, of course.
but what we're seeing with just the children right now with the inversion and transgender.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why that is coming up to the forefront in discussion as well, is the circumcision. Is how is this any different? It's still
Exact. Thank goodness. I was like, wow, they're really distracting you. We're real close to touching the topic. You're so close.
Yeah. Yes.
Just
So it's being discussed. It's beginning to circulate. So
nice.
yeah. Yes. I actually oh my goodness, I think it might have been over a year ago. Uh Tarot by Janine, she did a special little show. I can't think of her name. I'm so sorry. But they pulled cards and they looked at what happens in the States for childhood, like the circumcision and all the injections and the different things that we do in like the hospital. They're looking at like the hospital rituals that we
Ooh.
do.
Yep.
And how does that play into by putting all that trauma at birth? What does that look at into the human psyche? It was a very fascinating show, and they used tarot to go in
Yeah.
there.
Wow.
So it was interesting.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
have to watch that after this. I like that.
Yeah, I applauded them for broaching the topic. It's sensitive. These are sensitive topics, guys.
Yeah.
But we can't be afraid to have them. And just like Alexis and I are doing, we're just having a conversation about it. We're just thinking about things. There's aren't emotions coming into it. It's just something to calmly look back and just look at things from different perspectives.
Yes, we're out here trying to make some happy, healthy people and
Mhm.
babies and keep that going along. Like instinctively, just
Yes.
that maternal instinct, like we're going to protect them. That's
Yeah.
what we're built to do. So we're going to figure out everything that's causing any issue.
Yep.
Get rid of it.
Yep. And to bring it back to the witches of the past who were
Yeah.
persecuted, so many of them were healers. They were
Yeah.
just healers that were doing things. Mostly women were seeking them out because the local physician, the local doctor weren't treating them
Right.
for their issues. And so it was always about just trying to help people, help heal people, a safe place, and using nature and the earth to do that and bringing in that connection. Um, and so I'm going to wrap this up with a poem. I end all the shows with this poem.
Okay.
This is to all those burnt witches out there.
We
The
love you.
the ashes going higher, the smoke filling the sky. Oh, you didn't see my ancestors coming for me behind. As you light the flame of fear, burning away the inner voice rumbling near. Oh, you thought turning us to dust, we lay in the ground burying your lust. But a fire burns in our blood, memories drum through our veins. We are the burnt witches returned, the ones you thought you burned away. But our voices rise together in echo from a deep place you know. Our hearts, they do not tremble. We've come to awaken and help you grow. And on that note, Alexis, how can everyone find you and view your videos?
Okay, well, Ascension Diaries is the words you would use to type in on any social media you want. I'm everywhere, and my YouTube videos are on Ascension Diaries, the YouTube channel. I have a website, Ascension Diaries, if you want to get a personal session with me and get maybe some coaching with me, even just get a hold of me, whatever it is. I'm a very friendly person. Do not be shy. Reach out with any comment, any question. I eat it up. I am truly loving my job. I love my job. I love everybody. And if you think I can help you, that is what I'm here to do. I mean, every healer just wants a purpose and is grateful to be able to share their love with those who want it. So it's been a journey, and transforming personally this whole time has been awesome. And I want to help you do the same if you feel like you're ready and you need a little bit of a boost from somebody with some experience. And I think that's what we all like to do, is also then help the other healers who are ready to open that door and be themselves again. just stand in your power. Because like we said, we need every single one of you to be exactly who you are, or else the system starts to eat itself a little bit. So sorry, but you got to do it. You got to be tough. We'll help you though. We'll help you. So it was an honor to be here, honor to hold space and talk about these things. I'm super happy, literally highlight of my day. I had the best time. Thank you so much, Abby.
To re-listen to today's episode or to catch any other shows, please go to host Abby Lynn's website at abbylynn.co, where you can also find merchandise and other recordings. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you around the fire for the next one.